Hi everyone, I'm going to walk you through Lab 3 in one or two videos. I may pause if I get to a spot where I need a break. Of course, you can pause the video anytime you need a break. To start with, starting from the home page, I'm going to go to Lab or Modules and Lab Modules just to make sure you know where to find everything and to give you an overview of a couple other things that I've added. So there is now a lab and lecture playlist. I recorded lab 0. It's on that playlist, but there's also a direct link. I recorded lab 1. It's also in that playlist, but there's also a direct link. I recorded lab 2. And now I'm recording lab 3. There's a data set assignment. If you haven't started on it, you should. There are some GitHub commands to help you when updating the class repository, just in case you run into any problems. The main problem you could run into, this will solve for you. And then finally, I'm down here to lab 3. And so these are the instructions. I've already recorded 2 videos to go along with this to help you with the assignment. So one is a short video about how to save plots or graphs from RStudio. Another one is how to create a little bit nicer tables than the ones we created using the apply command. Basically, we're going to add a couple of steps using a package from R called Stargazer. Well, a package not from R, it's from the authors, it's from the people who wrote it. At least one of them is a political scientist, I think. It's used heavily by political scientists. It will produce nice tables in text that you can copy into Microsoft Word. It also is useful if you are ever at the point you're doing publication. It will produce publication quality tables where you can specify the journal you're going to. And it works with some of the political science journals. So that's why I use it, so I'm familiar with it, so I can help you with it more. There are other packages out there, and if you find one that you like better, that's fine too. All of that out of the way, I'm going to actually start in with the lab. And this one may be a little long, so take a break if you need to. There's a Word document and a PDF version. And look at this, they're both accessible. Can't believe I finally managed to make an accessible PDF. I'm going to get the PDF version. I'm going to go ahead and download it to my computer, even though it's already there. I'm going to go through the process. I'm going to download it to my desktop. Once it's there, I'm going to open it up, but I'm not going to open it that way. I'm going to open it from the folder because I want it to open in Adobe, which is going to take a second. Okay, so now I got it open in Adobe where I can read it nice and easy. I don't need Canvas anymore. I don't need that, or you don't need that. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to come in, well, we'll go through this in order. I'm going to make sure that I'm in the project for the class GitHub repo, which I can do by looking up here, and I see POLS 3316 underscore spring 2026. I know that's right, but what if I wasn't there? I can come to recent projects and I can go POLS 3316 spring 2026 and click on it. I'm not going to because it takes a while on my computer to switch projects, so I don't want to waste the time. The next thing I want you to do is clear the console and the environment, and we're not going to do that in a script. We're going to do it in the console, and so if I want to do it by typing a command in the console, this will clear the environment. So the environment out here, all the stuff that I had cleared out. I'm also going to clear out the old plots from when I was working on this before. If you don't have anything down there, you don't have anything to worry about. But I had some plots, and I don't want them getting mixed in. So the next thing I'm going to do is clear the console. And there's 2 ways to do that. Clearing the console I can use either Control L from Windows or Linux or Command L from a Mac, or I can come up here to edit. And if you're on a Mac, you have to push your mouse up to the top of the screen in order to get this menu. So the edit menu, clear console. And how do I know that Control L is the command for that? Well, out here are lots of keyboard shortcuts. So if you can start learning some of these by just noticing them. Control Z, undo. You make a mistake and you mess something up and you haven't saved anything yet, you can hit Control Z and a lot of times save yourself. So lots of things that you have different keyboard shortcuts for. So anyway, our next thing is we want to do a git pull to update the local repository, that is what's on your computer, with the latest material from the class GitHub repository, which is what's on GitHub. And so you do that just by coming out here and clicking the green arrow. The other way you can do it is by typing system git pull. Either one of those will download the latest stuff. I'm not actually going to do it because I made an edit and I don't want to overwrite it. What if you've got some stuff? What if you come up with an error where it tells you there's a conflict because you had already done some stuff? Well, you can do a git stash, and all you really have to do is git stash save. If you put git stash save, it will save it to the default and it will save your stuff. And then you do your git pull, and then you can restore your work on top of it by doing this git stash pop. So git stash save saves your work, git stash pop restores your work. But git pull for the most part is what you're going to need to do. So now we're going to start a new lab script for this lab. So we do that by coming up here to the push up here if you're on a Mac, and then when you get this menu, you come to the file menu, new file, and the type of file we want is an R script. I suggested the other day that you create a place to keep your stuff. So one of the things I do is to save my script immediately so I can give it a name. And I want this script to have the name lab3, but I want to save it down here. So this is my folder that I have already told GitHub to ignore. So I don't upload this, and you shouldn't download it. If you do, that's okay. Name yours something else. Use your own name. The whole point being to keep from having a conflict and to keep from overwriting your work. You want to have your work saved in a folder that's not the same as everybody else in the class. So I've got my lab 3. One of the other things you can do, if you want to just make sure it doesn't get overloaded, is you can name the script with your name. So I can name it Tom's Lab 3 and save it there. And that way it won't conflict with anything that I send you unless your name is also Tom. So we're going to start by doing a little more data loading. So this is actually just repetition of what we did before, mostly because we're going to reload the same data so that we can work with some of the same data. And then we will open one new piece of data because I'm going to show you how to get the V-dem data, the Varieties of Democracy Project data, from their GitHub repository as a package that you can use in R. So it'll be really useful because it's a huge data set, so it's way easier than downloading it and loading it, than downloading it from their website. Before we created this data frame that was called My Data, we saved it to a CSV file. So it should be out there. And actually it is out there because I actually saved it and it's in the GitHub repository now. So you should have it. And when we did it in lab 1, we saved it. Then we used it in lab 2. But we used a command called read.csv. It turns out that the tidyverse has a more efficient way of loading data. And so to start with, I went through the other day how to download the tidyverse, and the reader package is part of it. But I'm going to start my first 2 lines of this script being load the tidyverse and the reader package. And I'm going to be redundant. The reader package probably loads with the tidyverse, but I'm going to just be redundant to make sure it does. So that's loaded now. Now I'm going to load some data. I'm going to load the my data columns.csv using the read.csv function. And all I'm typing now is just a comment. It's got that hashtag in front of it. It's not going to actually do anything. I guess I wrote it a little bit differently. Oh yeah, what if you want to install the reader package? What if it pops up and tells you you don't have that package installed? Well, you're going to type install packages, start typing. There it is. Click on it. It will put the quotation marks in for you. I'm not going to, well, I'll go ahead and run that. It's not going to let me. It's going to ask if I want to restart R prior to install. If you get that, it means you've already got it loaded, so you don't want to do it. So cancel it, which is what I just did. But if you don't already have it, it will install it. You have to install it one time, so that's why I did it from the console, but you have to load it every time that you use it using the library command, which means it needs to go in the script, or your script won't work. So now I want to create something called my data loaded, and what I'm going to do, so I'm creating an object called my data loaded. I use the assignment operator, left arrow hyphen, and I'm going to use read CSV. It popped up here. This is it. It's the read CSV with a dot instead of an underscore. No, I'm sorry. That's not the right one. It's the read CSV with an underscore instead of a dot. So this is the one we're going to use. And then I have to tell it where to find it. And so I'm going to tell it data, and the name of it is my data.csv. And I'm going to come over here and double check to make sure it's called my_data.csv. So I'm going to do that, and then it'll be loaded. I already loaded the tidyverse at the top, but loading the tidyverse is important. Before we get to that, I am going to look at my data, so I'm going to run. What do we got here? My data. Error M is an unrecognized escape character. So I did something wrong. I typed I typed the wrong slash. So a slash like this is what's called an escape character. You put that in front of anything that you want it to disregard, basically. You put that in there. It's for if there's something that has a special meaning in R and you just want it to be used as the plain character, then you hit escape, like the $sign. The $sign has a lot of special meanings, so if you're wanting to just print a $sign, you'd have to put an escape in front of it. So I did that. I did the wrong slash. You can't do the wrong slash. R is very particular about that. You have to do this kind of slash. To tell it that you're going, that slash tells it that data slash, it's telling it that it has to go into the data directory to find the my data CSV. Now it found it just fine. I'm going to view my data loaded. I didn't put this in the lab. I'm just doing this in order to bring it up so we can look at it. So this is that table that I created that has the first, second, and fourth vectors with x1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's what that is. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, we're done with that. We've got it loaded. We are going to use it later to do some visualization stuff. We're going to do some really simple visualization with it to get started. But first, we're going to do a little more web loading. So I already loaded the tidyverse. Our next step is we're going to be loading the Gapminder dataset. Hopefully you remember this. We're going to do it exactly the same. We've got to load the tidyverse again. We don't actually have to do it again if you did it up here, but I did it out of order, so I'm going to do it again. Load the tidyverse first. We do that because we want to use to get the read.csv function. So we got the tidyverse. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define the web address, also known as the URL, which stands for Uniform Resource Locator. So the URLs are not always just web addresses. They can be other kinds of internet addresses, but they're web address or USL for Gapminder. And I'm going to do that here. I'm going to type URL to create an object called URL, and then the assignment operator, left arrow, hyphen, and then in parentheses, I want this. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to copy and paste, but remember, if you're doing this from Word, if those are curly, it's not going to work. The quotation marks. You've got to have the straight quotation marks. I'm going to pull this over for just a second to show you the full line. It looks like they're straight quotation marks, so I'm going to try it to see. Now, if you haven't already loaded the tidyverse, you got to do it first. I've already loaded it. Okay, it worked. So it copied okay from the PDF, but that's one thing you got to be careful about is, did it copy properly? Oh, I did want to point out this. This Gapminder comes from Jenny Bryan. She's a POSIT and RStudio developer. One time she famously threatened to set people's computers on fire if they kept putting that rmlist command, the one that we run to clear the environment. She threatened to set their computers on fire if they kept putting that in their scripts. If the first line of your script is set WD, which is to set a working directory, she'll set your computer on fire. And if the first list is rmlist equals ls, she'll set your computer on fire. And she gives a good reason for that. She actually lays out a workflow that I use now. I've changed it a little bit because this is fairly old, but I learned to use this project workflow, and I also learned to use Github for that project workflow as a result of reading some of her stuff. This is not the point of this lab, but really she's one of the people out there that you can't go wrong reading her stuff. You're going to find out all kinds of interesting things. There are a lot of good people out there to take advice from, and she's one of the best. Anyway, we've got the URL defined. Our next step is to actually run the command, the tsv command. And all we have to do is we go Gapminder data. So I want to name it Gapminder data. Being careful, when I saw I made a typo, I deleted it and typed it correctly, because if it doesn't line up with the rest of the code, it's not going to work. This name doesn't matter, but the fact that it matches what I'm going to type later does matter. Okay, so Gapminder data, and I'm going to use that read.csv command, and I'm going to tell it to read URL, which is this out here. So I don't, making sure I'm typing this correctly. I wasn't sure if that needed to be in quotation marks, so I was double checking. So this will create a data frame. Actually, it'll create something called a tibble, but for our purposes, we're going to continue to refer to it for now as a data frame. It's going to assign the value of reading that URL. So it's going to go out to her GitHub content here and download her data set. So we're actually getting this from her GitHub. So that's what this GitHub thing is all about: collaboration and sharing information. So now it's created Gapminder data, 1,704 observations of 6 variables. We can see what's out there by typing view Gapminder data and run, and we can see it. We can see what variables are out there, and we can, it's not a spreadsheet. You can't go in and change things, but you can sort by year, sort by that. You can sort by country name, which is how it defaults, but then you can reverse it and go in reverse alphabetical order. You could sort by continent, and you can also do some filters. So if you wanted to filter by country, so if you wanted to filter by countries with United in the name, or if you wanted to filter by United States, you could do that. So there are some things you can do with it once you pull up that view. I don't use that a lot, but it is out there. It's something you can do. So we've got the Gapminder data. Guess what? We're done with that one. We're going to move on now to load some data from V-dem project, Varieties of Democracy project. So the first thing that we have to do is, if you don't have it already loaded, if you haven't already installed it, which most of you will not have, there's a package we have to use called remotes, because this, and we're gonna install it down here. Install packages remotes. So it's remotes, not remote. So we want the remotes package. This allows us to install people's R packages that are not in the CRAN repository, the main R repository, but that are out there on GitHub. So we're back to GitHub again. This is going to allow us to go out to GitHub where that is available and install from there. Now you do the installation of that package here. In this case, because the next thing we're going to do is to install the V-dem thing, we're also going to run library down here, because we're only doing this in order to install something, and all of our installation work we should do in the console. So now the library remotes is loaded. That's fine. So now the next thing I want to do is so the remotes library has a function called install GitHub. It's got some others too. It's got install Git and install GitLab. So those are different ways. So GitLab, I think, is a different site than GitHub, and install Git is you have to actually tell it where you're going. So install GitHub, and then we want to put in their place, their GitHub repository. So I'm able to copy and paste from the PDF file. Be careful about doing that doing that from the Word file. As I've said, you got to make sure you don't get the curly quotation marks. So I don't really need a comment because this isn't going in the script, but I just did it. So that's what I'm doing. This is to install that V-dem data from GitHub. It's going to take a second. Yeah, so it hasn't changed. So I've already installed it, so it's not doing anything. It's saving me some time. But since you haven't already installed it, you may need to pause the video while you do that, because it'll take it a little bit because it's a pretty big package. It's got all the data in it. So now that we're there, we need to actually load that in our script. And so this we're going to do by, since we have installed it, we load the package with the library command. So that's what I'm doing here. So I load it. It's now loaded. It didn't do anything. You don't see anything. It didn't actually load all the data. It loaded a package that will pull the data for me. So the next thing is, if I wanted, there's a command, V-dem data V-dem. I could use that to load all the thousands of observations of thousands of variables, and it would be very big, and it would be out here. And I don't want all of that. Instead, I only want part of it. First of all, because we're trying to avoid working with multi-year data, I'm only going to pull 2014. And so I'm going to create a data frame with just the 2014 data. So I'm going to call it V-dem indices 2014. Why indices? Well, because the first thing I want to get is the 5 major democracy indices. But I'm gonna get other stuff too. So the first thing that I got to do is I got to use the V-dem data command and V-dem, but I don't want to run that yet because that would bring in the whole thing. So the next thing I'm going to do is use something new called the pipe. The pipe is kind of like the assignment operator. The pipe tells R that it's going to perform some functions on this before actually running it. And so what are those functions going to be? I'm going to hit return, and that'll take me to the next line. As long as I only hit return once, I'm okay. It takes me to the next line, but it's indented, so you can tell I'm still working on something. The computer can tell I'm still working on something. And so what I want to put on the next line is the thing that I want to filter by year, and I want it to equal, which requires putting 2 equal signs. So filter year, well, that should be filter year equal 2014. And then I'm going to give it another pipe that tells it, oh, I've got more left to do. So the pipe tells it there's more to it. And so the more to it is I want to select some specific variables. And I got these variable names by going to the code book for V-dem. And I'm going to make that available to you so that you can go get it for yourself in case you want to use this package. And I would highly encourage you to. There is lots of good stuff. So I know I want country name, which is just what it sounds like, but that's actually what they name the variable that they identify countries by. V2X polyarchy, which is, so this is one of the democracy indexes. So they have 5 democracy indexes. The first one's V2X polyarchy. Then there's V2X libdem, which I think I've mentioned before. Then there's V2X partipdem, which stands for participatory democracy. So how much do they meet participatory aspects of democracy? The next one is V2X delibdem, which is how deliberative is their democracy, which has to do with their representative nature. And then V2X egaldem, which is how egalitarian is their democracy. And that includes both some, it is mostly political variables, but it also includes some economic variables. I also want to get something called EGDPPC, which stands for economic gross domestic product per capita. So it's the GDP per capita. One called eCow exports, which the cow stands for correlates of war. So these two that have COW in the name came from the Correlates of War project. I'm going to come back and hit return again so that I can go to a new line so it'll look a little neater. eCow imports, so I've got the exports and imports for the country. eGDP, so I have just the GDP, not per capita, but just GDP. And then ePop, so the population. And these are going to be just for the year 2014. And then after I run that, I'm going to want to view this. So I'm going to want to view the V-dem indices 2014. Let's run this and see what happens. Hopefully what happens is it works. And it did. I got 179 observations of 11 variables. And if I run view, we'll see what they are. So here they are, 179 observations of 11 variables. We've got all of them that I entered. And why did I choose 2014? There was one of these variables that was only available until 2014. So that's why I chose that. Some of these variables, all of these major indexes or indices are available until very recently. They release new data every year. But some of this older stuff, the Correlates of War stuff, only runs until 2014 or 2019. Some of the other stuff that they get from other sources doesn't run as recently. So if you want GDP per capita data that's more recent, and you want to use the V-dem data, you would probably have to go get that somewhere else, like the World Bank, or if you want the export-import data for every country, you might need to go to maybe the World Bank or maybe the World Trade Organization might have that. There are a number of different places you could get that, and then you could merge it with the V-dem data. And we'll do that, if not next lab, then the lab after that. We'll do some merging. But that is actually, we've done everything except the last thing, which is I want to rename some of these columns with some nicer names in the V-dem data, because eGDPPC is a mouthful. I would rather just say GDP per capita. So I'm going to rename the columns. And the first thing I'm going to do is, so every time we've done this before, this is creating a new object when I type the name of an object and then put in the assignment indicator. But in this case, I'm not. What I'm actually telling it is, after you perform the operations that you're going to perform, you want to replace everything in this data frame. You want to replace everything in this object. And specifically, it's going to replace the column names by using the rename function. And so to do that, it's kind of redundant. I have to call this because that's where it's going to get it. And then I do the pipe to tell it this is what you're going to do. And then it's going to do the rename function, which is just what it sounds like. And so the rename function, the way it works is you put the new name and then the old name. So the old name was country name, the new name is country. I want to create a new variable just called polyarchy. And so it's going to come from v2x polyarchy. So what you just saw me do there was take advantage of RStudio keeping track of things for me. I didn't have to type everything. So I want to make one called liberal democracy instead of v2x libdem. And then participatory democracy, participatory democracy instead of v2x partipdem. And then deliberative democracy instead of v2x delibdem. And then egalitarian democracy instead of v2x egaldem. And then I want to rename my economic things, so I want to go GDP per capita, which is pretty normal, a normal way to say that, instead of EGDPPC. And then exports. I don't want to call it cow. Cow exports sounds like they're exporting cows, and cow has nothing to do with it. It's the Correlates of War project that kept a list of that kept this for a while. So I'm getting the cows out of it so people don't get confused. GDP by itself, GDP, and then population. I want to go EPOP, yeah. And it's a coding convention. A lot of times that you close that last parenthesis. Sometimes you close it on a separate line. It just makes it obvious that you did close it. A couple of the things that can run into problems here, if you put a comma after this, then it's going to expect another variable. So don't put a comma after your last one. After your last one, you go straight to the parentheses. And hopefully I did this all correctly because I just typed it all. Hey, what do you know? I could have copied and pasted that, but I typed it right. And so now we're going to view our data one more time just to see if I really did it right. So we're going to view V-dem indices 2014. It opens up and yeah, everything changed. We've got some friendlier variable names. One of the things you notice, I put that underscore instead of using a space. You've got to do that. There are some ways around that, but really that's how you need to do it. If you put a space, you have to use quotation marks, and then if you don't use quotation marks, it won't know what you're talking about, and it's just much better if you're going to separate words, the convention is to separate them with an underscore, not a space, and not a dash or anything else, but an underscore. So this is all done. We've got the data we need. The next thing we're going to do is data visualization, and I think I am going to take a break. I'm going to go get something to drink so I can continue to talk, and this may end up being a breaking point into 2 labs depending how this goes. But this is a good point to break. I'll come back and then we'll do the data visualization in the next video.